So let's just come down here and see what Becky Hammon says about this awkwardness, okay, between Caitlin Clark and A'ja Wilson. Hammon also witnessed the league's massive growth spike since 2024, which is largely attributed to Caitlin Clark's arrival in the WNBA. CNBC's Alex Sherman interviewed the iconic coach on November 12th. At one point,
when A'ja Wilson's own head coach says the uncomfortable truth out loud, you know it carries weight. During Becky Hammon's interview with CNBC's Alex Sherman in November, he finally addressed the question everyone in the basketball world has tried to avoid. Is it awkward that fans view Caitlin Clark as the face of the WNBA, while insiders believe A'ja Wilson is actually the best player alive? At first, Hammon delivered the expected professional response. She highlighted Wilson's trophies, her dominance, her reputation, and her towering 6'4" presence that makes her nearly impossible to stop around the rim. But after roughly half a minute, she said the line that A'ja supporters never wanted to hear. Caitlin Clark is bringing in the fanfare. Not they're both growing the game. Not multiple stars are elevating the league. A single, direct, undeniable statement. Caitlin Clark is driving the attention right now. And when that message comes from the very person tasked with promoting A'ja Wilson as the league's unquestioned superstar, it becomes one of the biggest unspoken truths finally confirmed.
Does that lead to sort of a awkward dynamic at all? Question mark. Should be noted, I mean, there are a lot of foul calls that does send A'ja Wilson to the line. To the point that other fandoms literally call it her special whistle. I mean, when she plays, special whistle literally trends online.
And that's exactly why Becky Hammon's comment carries so much weight. She's not some media personality tossing out hot takes for views. She's the head coach of the Las Vegas Aces, the woman responsible for leading A'ja Wilson, protecting her legacy, and making sure her franchise centerpiece stays confident and valued. If anyone has a reason to reinforce Wilson as the dominant figure of the WNBA, it's her. But when confronted with the Caitlin Clark versus A'ja Wilson conversation, Hammon didn't deflect, dodge, or sugarcoat. She acknowledged a fact that's becoming too big to ignore, and the data speaks for itself. When the Indiana Fever matched up with the Aces in 2024, viewership skyrocketed specifically because Caitlin Clark was on the floor. Yes, A'ja Wilson has controlled the league for years, stacking MVPs, championships, and respect. But that massive surge in mainstream attention didn't arrive until Caitlin Clark joined the WNBA. The dominance belonged to Wilson. The explosion belonged to Clark.
I kid you not. Quote, I don't think so, Hammon responded. I think people want to make more of it than what it is. Let the numbers do the talking. The winning do the talking. Caitlin had a tough year. Obviously, with injuries this year, she's going to be a tremendous player in the league. No doubt about that. A'ja Wilson is the best player on the planet, and she's got the hardware and the numbers and everything to back it up. But Caitlin Clark is bringing in the fanfare. I mean, she's one of the most exciting players to ever seen on the collegiate level. And I would assume a healthy year for her. She's going to be a great pro for a long time.
Watch how Hammon tries to cushion the impact afterward. She brings up Caitlin Clark's rough rookie season filled with physical challenges, praises her as one of the most electrifying players college basketball has ever produced, and confidently predicts long-term greatness. None of that is untrue, but pay attention to the move she makes right after. She quickly shifts the spotlight back onto A'ja Wilson, reinforcing her as the most dominant force in the WNBA, leaning on trophies, stats, and accomplishments. That's the classic balancing act of a coach. Acknowledge reality, but don't diminish your superstar in the process. The problem is, in this situation, there isn't room for a shared crown. Either A'ja Wilson represents the league, or Caitlin Clark does. And Hammon unintentionally revealed who truly drives fan attention. And this conversation is much bigger than pride or headlines. This is about revenue. The WNBA is deep in media rights negotiations. Expansion teams are hitting historic price tags. Player salaries are finally climbing, but the surge isn't coming from everywhere. It's centered around one athlete, and everyone inside and outside the league knows exactly who that is.
At this stage of her career, A'ja Wilson's a dream of every franchise in the league. Jason Kelsey's wife, Kylie Kelsey, has made an early pitch to the Las Vegas Aces superstar to bring her to Philadelphia. Does it say when this league is coming, or this team is coming? Oh my God, 2030. Would she still be playing in the league in 2030? That's 4 more. Yeah, probably at the back end of her career, I guess. As part of the WNBA's expansion, Philadelphia will have its WNBA team in 2030.
Now, since we're already talking about revenue and growth, we have to bring up Philadelphia. The city is officially getting a WNBA franchise in 2030, backed by Josh Harris and Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, the same ownership group behind the Philadelphia 76ers and the Washington Commanders, with Comcast stepping in as a minority investor. That's not just excitement, that's major financial power entering the league, and recruitment has already quietly begun. Kylie Kelsey, wife of former Eagles center Jason Kels, even hosted Aja Wilson on her podcast and delivered a full sales pitch: elite food, unmatched sports culture, and a fan base that lives and dies with its athletes. And she's absolutely right. Philadelphia sports fans are passionate, loyal, loud, and unapologetically demanding. But there's one uncomfortable detail. By 2030, Aja Wilson will be in the later stages of her career. She'll still be talented and valuable, but she won't be the same unstoppable force she is today. And on top of that, she's currently playing for a franchise owned by Mark Davis, with Tom Brady, one of the greatest athletes in sports history, holding part ownership. Leaving that setup isn't exactly an easy decision.
However, it didn't deter the wife of former Philadelphia Eagles center from making an early pitch to the best player in the world, and it was compelling. Quote, "I can set the scene for you," Kelsey said. "Our food scene, outstanding. I will tell you, the passion from fans in Philadelphia, oh yeah, unmatched. I will say on the receiving end, from visiting teams, negative feedback from people who joined us, 10 out of 10. Big fans. They're big fans of our fans. We pour it all into it. We really love the people who ride for us."
What makes this even more intriguing is how the expansion draft will play out. When Philadelphia officially joins the league in 2030, every current franchise will be forced to leave some players unprotected. And that leads to a very real, uncomfortable question. Will the Aces still view Aja Wilson as completely off limits? Or will they prioritize younger, cheaper talent and risk exposing a 32-year-old high-salary superstar? Right now, that idea sounds unthinkable to Aces fans. Aja is their franchise identity, but this is professional sports, and history shows over and over again that teams make brutally pragmatic choices when aging stars are involved. And if Caitlin Clark continues to dominate the spotlight and commercial momentum, while Oja's numbers naturally taper, the business math shifts fast. Philadelphia fans also need to recognize the reality of what they're stepping into. This isn't Indiana, where supporters were simply thankful to have Caitlin Clark and were willing to overlook a coaching staff that clearly wasn't built for massive expectations. Philadelphia demands instant success, or they revolt. This is the same city that booed Santa Claus threw batteries at athletes, and pushed Donovan McNabb out, even though he was one of the most successful quarterbacks in franchise history. So if Aja Wilson arrives at age 32 and doesn't immediately deliver championship-level results, the fan feedback won't be quiet. It will be constant and unforgiving. That passion Kylie Kelsey promotes, it's real, but it cuts both ways.
According to reports released by the league, the team will be based in South Philadelphia. Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment has the ownership of the team, with Comcast holding a minority stake. And by the way, in case you're wondering if you think that sounds familiar, that's Josh Harris, the owner of the Washington Redskins, who also owns the Philadelphia 76ers, by the way, an NFL owner. I suspect that's going to be a pretty badass market, actually. Look, I don't want to act like she's wrong about something,
Now let's return to the real tension behind all of this, the clash between public perception and basketball reality. A'ja Wilson owns the trophies, the championships, and the stat sheet. By every measurable on-court metric, she is the top player in the WNBA right now. That argument isn't up for debate, but Caitlin Clark possesses something A'ja doesn't: the rare ability to make casual, non-WNBA fans suddenly interested and emotionally invested. She draws people who never watched women's basketball before, and she keeps them tuned in. That isn't a skill you can coach, develop, or manufacture. It's star appeal, cultural pull, magnetism, and its value exceeds any box score category. The league has witnessed greatness countless times. Lisa Leslie, Candace Parker, Diana Taurasi, all iconic names who defined eras and changed the game. Yet even they didn't create the level of mainstream buzz that Caitlin Clark generated before she ever stepped onto a WNBA court. During her run at Iowa, the women's team was drawing bigger audiences than the men's program, something that was once considered impossible.
Philadelphia Eagles fans, and yeah, Philadelphia fans in general, very passionate. We know at times can get salty. All right, can get kind of salty. Looking right at you, CDS Sports Podcast. Let's Go Philly. Let's Go Philly podcast is his football channel. He covers a lot of Philadelphia sports on there. Very salty group of fans, but yeah, they ride and die for their players. I mean, every player that ever plays for the Eagles is the greatest player of all time at that position.
Becky Hammon tried to frame the situation as something people were overhyping, but that's classic coach language. Translation: yes, there's tension, but she's not about to fuel it on camera. She's far too seasoned for that. Hammon has lived her entire adult life in professional basketball, first as a player, then learning under Greg Popovich with the Spurs, and now as a championship-winning coach in the WNBA. She understands exactly how these dynamics shift behind closed doors. When one athlete draws far more eyes, media attention, and commercial value than another, it naturally creates pressure points. It doesn't necessarily lead to personal beef, but it does affect endorsements, headlines, negotiations, and long-term legacy conversations. To her credit, A'ja Wilson has handled this spotlight imbalance better than most. She's stayed focused, stayed polished, and continued to let her performance speak loudly, but she's also still human. Hearing your own head coach say publicly on a major business platform that someone else is driving the excitement, that has to sting, even if you fully understand the business logic behind it. And here comes the reality the WNBA can no longer sidestep. The league's explosive growth isn't a universal everyone is rising together moment. It can be traced to one single player, Caitlin Clark. The TV numbers show it. Attendance proves it, merchandise sales confirm it, and now even A'ja Wilson's coach has essentially validated it on national television. None of this takes away from A'ja's greatness. She remains the best all-around player in the league by any measure that relates to basketball ability, but there's a crucial difference between the top player and the top draw, and right now, Caitlin Clark completely owns the commercial category. This imbalance isn't new in sports, but the timing makes this moment different. The WNBA is negotiating new broadcast rights deals worth potentially billions. Expansion franchises are selling at unprecedented valuations. Salaries are finally climbing towards something more sustainable and competitive. All of that progress is happening because women's basketball finally has mainstream attention, and that attention isn't evenly distributed across the league. It is concentrated around one athlete, not shared equally among stars or franchises. That creates a massive challenge during future labor and league business negotiations. When the players' union and the league sit down to craft the next CBA, the inevitable question becomes, how do you fairly compensate the one player who is responsible for the majority of new revenue without completely blowing up the financial system? Do you create a unique Supermax tier for Caitlin Clark? Do you introduce a revenue-based compensation model tied to individual impact? These aren't fantasy scenarios, they are real conversations coming soon. And the outcome will determine whether the WNBA becomes a long-term financial success or ends up split into a super brand franchise and everyone else. So when Becky Hammon said Caitlin Clark is bringing in the fanfare, she wasn't just making a passing remark. She was acknowledging the core truth the league must confront head on. You can be the best basketball player alive and still not be the most valuable business asset. A'ja Wilson has done everything right. Dominated on the court, remained poised off it, and represented the league flawlessly. But pro sports aren't built on fairness. They're built on demand, attention, and revenue. And the Philadelphia expansion situation highlights that reality perfectly. When the new franchise launches in 2030, they could theoretically build around Aja Wilson if she's available. But will they choose a legendary veteran, or will they prioritize someone who attracts Caitlin Clark level engagement? Because by then, the league will have years of data confirming exactly which players move the business forward. And Philadelphia fans are smart enough to understand that. They understand how the market works. They know that pure talent alone isn't enough if it doesn't translate into ticket sales, jersey demand, and national buzz. They've already watched the Philadelphia 76ers lean heavily on Joel Embiid, an MVP and statistical monster, yet still fall short of a championship. Eventually, being the best doesn't matter if you aren't also the draw. That's where things get complicated for the Las Vegas Aces. They've built a winning identity backed by serious ownership power in Mark Davis and Tom Brady. And they compete in a city that supports success. But Las Vegas isn't just a sports town, it's an entertainment capital. Both fans and tourists want a show, not just fundamentally sound basketball. If the Aces keep winning titles with Aja Wilson leading the way, the formula works. But if things shift, if injuries hit, if they fall short in the playoffs, or if they get defeated by a team led by Caitlin Clark, the storyline flips instantly. The conversation no longer centers on who is the superior player, but rather on who delivers when the lights are brightest. Becky Hammon is fully aware of that reality. That's why her response on CNBC was deliberate and balanced. She gave Aja Wilson full credit as the league's most dominant basketball force, while still acknowledging that Caitlin Clark is the one fueling the league's surge in new fans. Both statements can coexist, even though they create an undeniably uneasy dynamic. So the real question becomes, can the WNBA navigate this without letting it turn toxic? Can they elevate Caitlin Clark as the public face of the league without diminishing what Aja Wilson has earned? Can they build a business model that rewards elite performance and superstar marketability? Can they avoid becoming a one-star ecosystem where the rest of the league feels like background characters? These are the strategic challenges awaiting the WNBA as it moves into a new era of attention, investment, and pressure. Hammon's comment, and even though she phrased it carefully, exposed just how fragile the balance is. When Aja Wilson's own coach acknowledges that someone else is responsible for bringing in the momentum, it reveals where the league's true priorities lie, no matter what the official talking points say. So where do things stand now? The WNBA is finally receiving national recognition it has chased for decades, but that spotlight is concentrated around one player, while the league's best player watches someone else become the centerpiece of the growth narrative. Coaches are tasked with managing egos, protecting identities, and staying truthful, while fans debate whether dominance or popularity is more valuable. The truth is, both matter. But when you're building a long-term business, negotiating billion-dollar media packages, and converting casual viewers into die-hard supporters, fan engagement always wins. Becky Hammon understands that. The league office understands that, and deep down, whether she admits it publicly or not, Aja Wilson understands it too.